And in June of 1936, Germany had for the first time what it had never had in its history. It had a national chief of police. The German system at that time was a federal system like ours, with police powers reserved to the states. And the police forces were regional and localized police forces in states, communities, counties, like here in the United States. But Himmler consolidated police power at the national level in June of 1936 under himself as the chief of the German police in his capacity as Reich leader of the SS. So from 1936 on, the police forces in Germany worked basically outside the normal standards of law. At the same time, one of the other principal figures involved in the decapitation of the SA in June of 1934 was this man Theodor Eicke. Eicke in 1933 had been appointed as the second commandant of a detention complex that had been hastily erected outside Munich at a little town called Dachau. And Himmler had a great deal of confidence in Eicke's organizational ability. He had a nasty, mean, brutal streak. He was just the kind of man to organize a permanent detention center or concentration camp for political prisoners in Bavaria. And by June of 1934, Eicke had made Dachau into what became known very quickly as a model concentration camp. And it was Eicke, acting on Himmler's orders with Hitler's blessing, who actually shot Ernst Röhm to death in his cell in the Stadelheim prison in Munich. And as a reward for murdering Röhm, and because of his achievements at Dachau, in July of 1934, Himmler appointed Eicke to the new post of Inspector General of Concentration Camps and ordered him to create a permanent system of large concentration camps staffed and guarded by SS soldiers who would be trained by Eicke. And the system that emerged by 1938 was based on 4 and then 5 large concentration camps. Dachau, Sachsenhausen or Oranienburg, Buchenwald, the notorious camp at Weimar, Ravensbrück, which became a concentration camp for women, and after the Anschluss, or the incorporation of Austria in March of 1938, the Mauthausen concentration camp near Linz in Austria. And it is noteworthy that 4 or 5 of the most notorious mass murderers of the SS, people associated in the minds of victims, survivors, students, and historians as principal SS perpetrators, all served in the concentration camps at one time or another and were protégés of Theodor Eicke. They were trained by him. They were taught the business of brutality and mass murder by Theodor Eicke. They included Adolf Eichmann, who served as a guard at Dachau in 1934, Rudolf Höss, the later commandant of the Auschwitz extermination complex, who served at Dachau and also at Oranienburg under Eicke. Odilo Globochnik, the SS general who ended up being the central figure in Operation Reinhard, which is the code name for the extermination of the Jews of Poland. Globochnik had served briefly in a concentration camp guard unit. Paul Werner Hoppe, who became the commandant of the Stutthof concentration camp near Danzig in Poland, was a protege of Eicke's, as was Max Koch, who was the commandant at Buchenwald, Anton Kindl, who was the commandant at Sachsenhausen, and a man named Friedrich Hartgenstein, who also was camp commander at Auschwitz and then later at the Natzweiler concentration camp in France. the generation of hands-on camp administrators, perpetrators, murderers, were the protégés of Theodore Eicke, and their experience in the SS all went back to the early history of the concentration camp system in the 1930s, from 1933 on.
So when these initial concentration camps were established, what was the objective?
Well, the objective was twofold. Hitler's objective, which Himmler and Heydrich understood from the first, was to create a type of detention center, a prison, which they preferred to call a concentration camp, into which you could throw anybody who potentially was any kind of threat to the Nazi Party or to Hitler's regime, or anybody who might even conceivably challenge the new Nazi state in any way. And that included people who were communists, socialists, members of the Catholic Center Party, Democrats, Jehovah's Witnesses. The Nazis had a particular distaste and dislike of Jehovah's Witnesses, because Jehovah's Witnesses, of course, refused to recognize the secular authority of the state and were believed by the Nazis to be particularly seditious. Catholics, Protestant clergymen, anybody, and of course Jews in larger and larger numbers as the 30s wore on. But a concentration camp is not a prison in Germany in the 1930s that is under the control of the Ministry of the Interior or a state agency like the Department of Corrections in Oregon or the Department of Corrections here in Virginia. Concentration camp is under the jurisdiction of the and command authority of the inspector of concentration camps, who is a senior officer in the SS. So a concentration camp exists outside the normal confines of authority and accountability to any state agency.
Now, prior to this,
there's another essential thing here that needs to be explained, though. That is, the Nazis very quickly in 1933 developed a special kind of arrest procedure that was illegal, and they used that special arrest procedure on people they wanted to throw specifically into a concentration camp. And that procedure was called protective custody or protective detention. The German noun is Schutzhaft. And the Gestapo, which came into existence at the same time, the secret state police, which was also an agency of the SS after 1936, the Gestapo issued the warrants, the protective custody warrants, and if you got picked up on a protective custody warrant, you were hauled into the police station, fingerprinted, then you were shipped off immediately to a concentration camp, and you could be held there indefinitely. You had no right to make a telephone call, no right to summon a lawyer, no right to an appearance in court. You could be held originally for 30 days, subsequently for 60, then for 90 days. After the war broke out, if you were put in a concentration camp, you could be held there indefinitely. And only the Gestapo decided whether you got out or when you got out. So everything involved in using the camps as an instrument of terror was based on the procedures that acted outside the normal laws and checks and balances in a legal system in a civilized state.
All right, now before Hitler, you had the Weimar Republic, and it was a republic. Is that?
That's correct.
Just like the Republic of the United States of America.
It was a federalized system in which the national government and the individual state governments in Germany shared powers. And the federalized system that existed in the Weimar years was itself an outgrowth of the merged state system of the German Empire between 1871 and 1918. Germany was a collection of individual states. Russia, Schleswig-Holstein, Hanover, Württemberg, Baden, Bavaria. Saxony, and then a whole collection of smaller states.
All right, hold it right there, Charlie. We've got to take a quick break. We'll come back and develop this whole evolution of this Waffen-SS group that you studied. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest this evening is Dr. Charles Sydnor. His book, The Soldiers of Destruction, and he follows the evolution of one of these groups right through to the bitter end, so to speak. Fascinating reading, fascinating book. We'll tell you how to get it also as we move along here tonight. Our phone lines will not be answered for a while until we get into this discussion a little deeper. So if you just relax and pour yourself a cup of coffee or something and hang on, because I'll tell you when we'll take calls. Dr. Charles Sydnor, his book, Soldiers of Destruction. More